Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, I would like to continue our journey, our exploration through this set, Blu-ray set, released by the Criterion Collection. This is, of course, the set which is called Bruce Lee, His Greatest Hits. That's spy number 1036. Up to now, I have been focusing my attention in a number of videos on certain aspects of this set and also the films that are included in this set. And today I would like to continue along with that discussion by focusing on the fourth Blu-ray disc included in this set. On such fourth disc, we have the film from 1973, and it is called Enter the Dragon. With respect to this film, Enter the Dragon, from 1973, I think that many people, quite rightly so, would consider this film to be one of the greatest martial arts films ever made, or the greatest martial arts film ever made. And also, by extension, I think that many people, again, quite rightly so, would consider this film, Enter the Dragon, to be the ultimate representation, the highest peak, the highest pinnacle of the expression, the cinematic expression of Bruce Lee, the man and the martial artist. And therefore, for those reasons and others, this film, Enter the Dragon, is one of the most significant films in Bruce Lee's cinema, and it is also one of the most exciting, entertaining, thrilling, electrifying films from this era. Even now, when I see it, I am so amazed by its dynamism, the way it just has so much energy, the electricity that just comes off the screen, the voltage that this film contains is something that is just so extraordinary. And that has to do, of course, with the on-screen persona and the undeniable charisma and charm, the ultra cool Bruce Lee as he is in this film, Enter the Dragon. Iconic. This is iconic stuff. One of the most iconic films ever made, starring one of the most iconic people that ever was. This is Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. This film is, of course, very significant in the context of Bruce Lee's career, his cinema career, for many reasons, as we know. This film came, of course, after a number of huge hits in Hong Kong cinema that Bruce Lee had with Golden Harvest, starting with The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, and then The Way of the Dragon. And then now we have this Hollywood calling card, if you will, this Hollywood production or co-production with a relatively higher budget with other stars, John Saxon and Jim Kelly. And we have Hollywood production values as well that are being represented in this film. And then we have, combined with that, aspects of Hong Kong cinema and, of course, Bruce Lee and everything that he brings to the proceedings. And as we know, he brings so much to this film, Enter the Dragon. And with that combination, we have, again, what is one of the most entertaining, explosive martial arts films that has ever been made. And therefore, this film becomes an ultimate representation in many ways of Bruce Lee, the man, the myth, and the martial artist. His physical fitness, his body, his physique, as it appears in all of his films, is of course one of his trademarks. The way that he kept himself physically fit is the stuff of legend. But in particular, his look, his physique in Enter the Dragon is just, simply put, absolutely stunning. And to see this stunning physical display in action in the fight sequences, and also in the way that he carries himself in the non-fight sequences, in the more quieter scenes, in the scenes of character and dialogue. Every time he is on screen, Bruce Lee shows us the absolute peak of his physicality. And so this therefore becomes a beautiful and supreme cinematic expression of Bruce Lee, the man, and what it was he was about in terms of physical fitness and in terms of fighting style and in terms of the self-expression and artistry that was involved with the martial arts of Bruce Lee. Martial arts is a method of fighting, and it is a way to combat opponents in this film. Of course it is. Of course it is. It therefore becomes the main focus of entertainment. And in conjunction with that, it becomes a way of self-expression of what it is that Bruce Lee feels in his heart and in his soul. He expresses that in the physical form that we see in the fight sequences in Enter the Dragon. And those methods and those modes of self-expression are breathtaking, they are brilliant, they are beautiful, they are poetic. We have seen this in Bruce Lee's cinema up to now, of course, but in Enter the Dragon as well, we are seeing through the martial arts physical expressions, the physicality of Bruce Lee's martial artistry, we are seeing his cinematic poetry of self-expression for us on screen. It is forever embodied in this film, Enter the Dragon, for many people to see for years and years and years to come. This is Bruce Lee's cinematic poetry that he shared with all of us, and it is so beautiful and so breathtaking to this very day. The way that he adapts, the way that he uses different weapons and different styles, the way that we hear his voice and the way that we hear his, not just his dialogue, but also the sounds that he makes. Everything about this is a mode of self-expression, and all the details that he adds to this, the iconic little traits in terms of the little details of during his fights and how his eye movement and the way that he treats his own body and how he treats injury and the shake of the head and the real stare downs and the iconic dialogue that accompanies so many parts of this film. All of this comes together in this iconic role and iconic film that therefore remains one of the most important landmarks of Bruce Lee's cinematic legacy. Of course it does. Of course it does. And we have to mention, of course, the other Hollywood aspects of this film, and we have other stars of this film, Jim Kelly and John Saxon, who really helped to round out this very interesting, multifaceted film. It is a film that is a martial arts film, but it is also a revenge drama. It is also a spy thriller. It is also a Bruce Lee film, but it is also a Hollywood production. And these aspects, I think, come together very nicely in the form of the repartee between and among the characters. And they have a nice camaraderie and chemistry that is shown on screen. We have a great villain, Han. We have a great setup in terms of the island and everything that it represents. And we have wonderful little moments of humor that are supplied by John Saxon's character, Jim Kelly's character, or Bruce Lee's character, and others. And on top of this, we have a really interesting, fascinating look at a martial arts story that involves schools and hundreds of years of tradition and the modernization of tradition and the way in which past and present collide, and the ultimate showdown between good and evil, and revenge, and also righteousness and justice. And all of these aspects we have seen expressed in Bruce Lee's films up to now. Bruce Lee as the defender, Bruce Lee as the protector. And now here we have yet another aspect of that. Bruce Lee is almost like a soldier of justice, if you will, as well as a defender of the Shaolin Temple, and also the ultimate embodiment of the iconic spirit of the martial arts that Bruce Lee represented in his life and in his art. So in these ways, this film is multifaceted and fascinating, and it holds so many famous shots, famous lines of dialogue, and but it, of course, it is, I think, best remembered, ultimately remembered as being one of the most iconic Bruce Lee films ever made. I must say that I saw this film when I was really little, and it's just been, my life has been, I feel like I've always been with this film, or this film has always been with me. All the little details about this film have stuck with me. This film holds so much importance for me ever since I saw it as a little kid, and I know it holds so much importance for so many people around the world, that it is still, to this day, one of the most supreme examples of martial arts cinema that has ever been made, and it is one of the most iconic encapsulations of the electrifying cinema of Bruce Lee. This is Enter the Dragon. With that, my friends, now let's turn to the Criterion Collection release of Enter the Dragon, which is, in my eyes, one of the great strengths, one of the shining appeal points of this set. In other words, Criterion has treated the film Enter the Dragon in such an interesting, and I would say even historic way, that really deserves as much attention as possible. So, first of all, we should remind ourselves that Enter the Dragon is on disc 4. This is true for all the other films. All the other films, The Big Boss is on disc 1, Fist of Fury on disc 2, The Way of the Dragon disc 3, Enter the Dragon disc 4, Game of Death, which we'll talk about in a later video, is on disc 5, and then supplements are on discs 6 and 7. So in other words, the main feature is included on its own separate disc, and then supplements as well accompanying, and then also further supplements on the 6th and 7th disc. So Criterion chose to present Enter the Dragon on disc 4 for this reason. Now, as some of you may already know, Enter the Dragon has a number of versions. There is the special edition version that is 102 minutes. That has been the standard version on home media release since around 1998. In other words, the 102-minute longer version with some extended scenes around the beginning and also around the end, with also some added dialogue for Bruce Lee's character and others. This 102-minute version, the longer special version, has been the standard version of this film since around 1998 on home media, on DVD, and on Blu-ray releases, such that the theatrical version, the shorter 99-minute version, was not the standard version for home media release purposes. And so Criterion, therefore, could have chosen to have the special edition release be on this 4th disc, be the main feature, Enter the Dragon, for purposes of presenting Enter the Dragon on this set, right? So they could have chosen, or Criterion and the license holders could have chosen to have the special edition be the standard version by which Criterion would make this release. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that. Instead, and very interestingly, they decided to have the shorter 99-minute version be presented as the standard version. That is the version of Enter the Dragon that would be on its disc 4. And indeed, when you check Criterion's website as of now, you will see that it is the 99-minute version that is being described. And when you check out the insert, the booklet, it is indeed the 99-minute version that is being described in the write-up for Enter the Dragon inside here. In other words, it is therefore not the special edition version, the 102-minute version, but instead the 99-minute version that is being put forth as the standard version on disc 4 and in all the promotional materials and description materials by Criterion via this set, Bruce Lee, His Greatest Hits. This, therefore, is something that we have not seen in terms of Enter the Dragon's home media release history since 1998 for the longest time. And thus I consider this move by Criterion and also the powers that be a very interesting one. It is almost as if Criterion and the powers that be, when making that decision, decided to, in essence, recalibrate the standardization of the versions of Enter the Dragon, such that up to now, while we have seen all the releases, the main releases from Warner Brothers home media, be focusing in on the special edition release, now with Criterion we see the other version, the 99-minute version, be put forth as the standard release. I consider this to be a very subtle, quiet recalibration of the standardization of the versions of Enter the Dragon, thus making this very interesting. Speaking of the fourth disc's 99-minute theatrical cut version of the film, this is described as being based off of a 2K digital restoration of the film, and I must admit it looks stunning. It looks absolutely beautiful. Again, especially since, to my knowledge, we haven't had this theatrical release version on Blu-ray. I remember having this release, the 99-minute version on VHS, and this is the version that I grew up watching, and I love this version for its music cues and its timing and the like. And so, and then to see it in this glorious presentation, as presented on this Criterion disc, is truly breathtaking. So this is really wonderful. I should note that there are no audio options. There's no commentary track, as far as I can tell, for this Enter the Dragon 99-minute version as we see it on disc 4. So please keep that in mind. But continuing on, also on the disc, the fourth disc, we have some supplements. So first we have a 9-minute interview with Matthew Pauly, and this is on Enter the Dragon. So as we know, up to now we have had some great interviews with Matthew Pauly about each of the films, and here is his great interview on Enter the Dragon. And then we have a 30-minute making of documentary called Blood and Steel by Paul Heller. And this is from 2003, and so I think for many people we've already seen this documentary, but it's really great to have it included here as part of the supplements for Enter the Dragon on disc 4. So once again, Blood and Steel from 2003. And then we have the 19-20-minute 1998 work documentary called Bruce Lee in His Own Words. And this is a great work, John Little, and this is in essence an embodiment of Bruce Lee's philosophy and his outlook on life and martial arts in the words of Bruce Lee himself through interviews and other recordings. So really wonderful to have. So this is not necessarily exclusively linked to Enter the Dragon per se, but it's more linked to the philosophy of Bruce Lee embodied on a broader level. And so this is still, of course, very significant to Enter the Dragon and to other Bruce Lee films and to Bruce Lee himself. And then we have a number of short interviews compiled into one long set. This is with Linda Lee Cadwell, and this is also from 2003. This totals approximately 16 minutes, and this is also this is exactly the set of interviews with Linda Lee Cadwell that we had from earlier Warner Brothers releases of this film on Blu-ray. And so these are 10 interviews, or short segments of interviews with Linda Lee Cadwell, where she talks about different aspects of Bruce Lee and meeting Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee's position in cinema, how he saw Enter the Dragon, the importance of Enter the Dragon, certain incidents that happened on set, family, importance of family, and that sort of thing. So these interviews, I've checked, and they are the same as what we have seen in past Warner Brothers releases. There's a moment where one of the segments is actually the order is switched. For instance, there is a segment called New Standard, and New Standard is where Linda Lee Cadwell is talking about the standards of Hong Kong cinema. And what Hong Kong cinema audiences were expecting. So this segment of her interview is actually in a different order than where it was found in, say, an earlier Warner Brothers Blu-ray release. But I think the contents are the same. And then we have an interview with Tung Wai, and this is 3 minutes. And this interview is something that I recognize as being a supplement that is found on the Shout Blu-ray release of The Big Boss. And so we have it here included with Disc 4, Enter the Dragon. So again, a Tung Wai interview. And then we have a section which is called Promotional Material. So there's one a subsection here called Electronic Press Kit, which is a short archival making of documentary, about 7 minutes. And then we have a section for trailers, and then one section for TV spots, and then another section for a 1-minute radio spot. These are promotional materials for Enter the Dragon. Again, theatrical version, 99 minutes, disc 4. And then I should go to what we have on disc 7. We have a number of supplements on disc 7 and also on disc 6 as well, which I will get to in a separate video. But one of those supplements on disc 7 is the special edition release of Enter the Dragon, as I mentioned before. It is the 102-minute version, and this version is now treated as a supplement. It's a great supplement, of course, don't get me wrong, but is now treated as a supplement rather than the 4th disc main presentation of Enter the Dragon. So that is, as I suggested earlier, a very interesting and significant move in and of itself. But focusing in on the special edition version as we see it on such disc 7, we should note that we have the Paul Heller commentary track from 2003, and then we also have something that's very interesting, which is we have, first of all, the audio track. So in addition to the commentary track, which is an audio option available for the special edition version on disc 7, we also have the 5.1 surround sound track in English. And then another option is the mono track in English. Now, once again, I have to admit that I am not an expert in all of the release history of Enter the Dragon that has ever been made on home media ever. I don't have all of the releases, so I can't make a direct, specific, comparative analysis on this point. But I have a number of the releases, and I don't have the deepest knowledge, but still I have done my best to research this. And my understanding is that this mono track that is included as an audio option for the special edition version of Enter the Dragon on disc 7 is very significant, because this includes Bruce Lee's voice, or what purports to be Bruce Lee's voice, for about 90% of the extended footage of the special edition. That includes some new extended footage and Bruce Lee and Bruce Lee dialogue. Now, as some of you may know, the special edition version with this extended footage, with this extra added Bruce Lee dialogue, was made available in the past, and it is made available on the 5.1 surround track that is an audio option for the Criterion release. Has always been made available, but it was with someone who was acting with Bruce Lee's voice. So it wasn't Bruce Lee's voice, but it was, in fact, my understanding was that it was John Little who was impersonating Bruce Lee for this dialogue scene. And it was a really great performance, I must say. It's a really great Bruce Lee voice sound that he was able to achieve. So I have never seen, well, I should take this back. I have seen this scene isolated with Bruce Lee's own voice on top of the audio. The voice itself was maybe of a recording quality that was not of the same level as the other actor dialogue that was dubbed over. So there's a difference, a noticeable difference in the recording quality. But still, I have seen the scene isolated with Bruce Lee's voice, or what purports to be Bruce Lee's voice. But I never saw this scene with Bruce Lee's voice integrated into the entire film itself until now with Criterion's release. And therefore, this, to my eyes and to my understanding, makes this release very significant in the history of Enter the Dragon's home media release over the years. Thus making, I think, the Criterion box set, I think, a very beneficial for anyone who is a fan of Bruce Lee's cinema. So it's really wonderful to have this option. With that, I would say that the release of Enter the Dragon by Criterion is absolutely stellar. Now, does it have all of the supplements that we have seen up to now with Enter the Dragon and past releases? That's something that I'll get to in a later video when I talk in more detail about the supplements that are included on the other discs of this set. But in terms of, so I'll get to that discussion later. But for now, when we think about Enter the Dragon, the film itself, and how it's presented by Criterion, and the choices that were made by the people concerned about how to present this film, what versions to present and how, what versions to put up front and what versions to put on the supplements, etc. When we think of all this, and we think that ultimately what they decided to do was to have the 99-minute version as being the main attraction of the film. And then they had as well some other extra added treats in terms of the audio when it comes to the special edition. When we have all of this, think of all this combined, I think we can, at least I, reach the conclusion that Enter the Dragon as presented by Criterion is this is fantastic. This is so important in my eyes, and then to have this as the main attraction makes it even such a bold statement that really makes me very, very happy. Very happy indeed. Because don't get me wrong, the special edition is still great. It's absolutely great. The scenes that are included that weren't included before, they are just so much of an embodiment of the soul and the spirit of Enter the Dragon. And it's wonderful to have both options in one place. This is, in my view, one of the great strengths of this set from the Criterion Collection. Once again, as included in Bruce Lee, His Greatest Hits, this is the film Enter the Dragon. So that's it for now, and so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much again for your time. As always, my friends, be well, stay safe, take very good care of yourselves, and cheers.